Thanks very much, President Scott. Let's get this. All right. Again, a big welcome to our candidates for City Council position number 4, the incumbent Kate Dexter, who also serves as the city's mayor, and her challenger, John Proctor. The position they're seeking is nonpartisan. It's got a term of 4 years. And by the way, the ballots are just around the corner. They're going to be mailed out to us on October 13th. The election itself is on November 2nd. We'll begin with the candidates' opening statements and then go to questions from our Nor'Wester membership. All questions, of course, need to be addressed to both candidates. And to ask a question, please go to participants and put your hand. To keep things orderly, please don't unmute yourself until I recognize you. With that, let's ask each of the candidates to tell us in a maximum of 3 minutes each who they are and why we and our friends should vote for them. And I'll hold up a note when the candidates have just under a minute left. Anyway, let's start with Kate, who's listed first on the ballot in this race. Kate, go ahead, please.
Thank you all. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. I'm Kate Dexter, and I've been a resident of Port Angeles for 11 years. I'm a single mom of 2 kids who attend Port Angeles Public Schools. A bachelor's degree in history and public service and a master's degree in public administration. I'm a program specialist in the nursing department at Peninsula College and work with Shelby regularly. One of the things that I have most enjoyed in my almost 4 years on council is getting to know even more people in our community and working with the great organizations in our town. Port Angeles is an amazing place to live and raise your kids. High-performing relationships are in our strategic plan for a reason. I'm pleased to be part of maintaining and growing many of these relationships, from Peninsula Housing Authority to our local Coast Guard leadership, Congressman Kilmer to the county commissioners. These partnerships are critical for the city, especially as we continue to address our ongoing needs. I know many of you have great connections within the community as well. It's part of what makes this place so great. The Dream Playground is a wonderful recent example of what happens when caring community members come together. During my time on council, I've had the privilege of serving as deputy mayor and am currently serving as mayor. One thing I hear consistently from community members and leaders is that they appreciate my professionalism in facilitating council meetings and making sure that everyone has a chance to be heard. Under my leadership, the council has passed some upstream solutions, saved utility ratepayers millions of dollars, and faced the housing crisis head on. We know that there is work to do. We hear from constituents about the increase in the number of visible outdoor homeless and camping in public spaces. We know we need more permanent supportive housing units and will continue to work alongside the county and other partners on this issue. I will continue to advocate for support for childcare options so parents can go to work. I will continue working with fellow council members and staff to keep our utility rates stable as we have the last 4 years. I will continue to support innovative infrastructure ideas like testing for groundwater viability as a backup when the LWA runs low. Continue to support the work we are doing on our climate action plan. I'm excited to continue the great work we are doing to update the municipal code. I will continue to listen to what our community is asking for, like I did when I supported reestablishing code enforcement. I will continue to support our excellent police department and work with the chief to advocate for policies and legislation that best serve both our officers and our community. The other day, my opponent said that this council has had 4 years to fix things and we haven't done it. There will always be more to do and we will keep on chipping away. Over the last 4 years, we have made major strides, initiated significant upstream solutions, have taken the time to build the relationships that will get us where we want to go, and have spent almost half of that 4-year term doing that work within the restrictions required of a global pandemic. I'm proud of the work that I have done representing the city of Port Angeles as a council member, and I hope to continue that work.
Thanks very much, Kate. John, over to you.
Again, my name is John Proctor, and I am running for the Port Angeles City Council. I'm a retired veterinarian. I have degrees in Bachelor of Science
Sorry, John, we've hit the 3-minute
Okay,
limit there. All right.
that's okay. I could talk
All right.
for hours.
All right. Well, thank you again. And to Kate. Now questions, let's go to questions from the membership. To ask a question again, please go to participants and raise your hand. And President Scott, you have your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Kate and John, thanks for joining us this morning. We really appreciate both of your service and dedication to our community, and it means a lot to us. And your time this morning, it's obviously very important. So my question has to do with homelessness versus property values. My mom, she lives on Milwaukee Drive, and right at the corner of Milwaukee Drive at N Street, the owner, wanting to help address homelessness, was going to take his, what I consider to be a small lot, and he's going to subdivide it in 17 smaller lots and set up housing for homelessness. And it was quite a shock for the community, the residents along Milwaukee Drive, and they're all worried about their property values because it would have been right as you come in. Obviously, homelessness is a very critical issue that needs to be addressed. But if it won't reach the city council, but if it was, where the city council had to vote on whether to allow that or not, how would you vote, and how do you personally balance the need to take care of homeless versus preserving people's property value? So that's
All right, Kate, could you go first with this one?
Yes, and we only have 2 minutes, right? I feel like
Well, you actually can, as long as you need, really.
oh, as long, okay. Well, I'll
Then
try to
John.
be succinct. I think that's a reasonable question and one that we certainly hear about a lot. What I would say is, first of all, while I appreciate that approach without knowing a whole lot about it, my initial reaction is there are better locations for even a tiny home village that are more accessible to services, which to me makes a lot more sense. I think we also just need to continue working on policies that get us more housing units, period. When we create more housing units, we can help, raise the level so that more people have housing. And I think we need to work with neighbors and communities if something like that were to happen. I think it certainly is. I understand that you would be concerned also from we need more density, but maybe not quite that dense in a neighborhood such as that. And I'm not sure that we would have the infrastructure capacity to have something like that in that neighborhood. So I think we need to think strategically about where we're building sheltering options. I would consider 17 tiny homes probably to be sheltering option, not permanent supportive housing. And that I wouldn't think that would be a great place for something like that. That's not specifically your question, but I think it's going to be a challenge for all of us to come up with that balance. And I think it's going to take some hard conversations in our community because people have to be somewhere. We all have to have a place to live. And where we put that, I think, is going to be important and strategic and take some good community conversations.
Okay, John, could you address this one?
First of all, I'd like to defend Kate on that. She has, I'm sure, no knowledge of that situation. I happen to live next door to it, and I have fought that adamantly. The individual who owns that property, he wants to build this complex underneath an eagle's nest. And I have asked him about that. I said that they're a protected species, and his argument is they're not a species that's going out of existence. Also, he wants to trade private land that is non-usable over the bluff for an extension of 6th Street extension, which belongs to the city. He wants to trade bad land for good land. He wants to have an exit right onto 4th and N Street. There's already 4 streets that intersect there, and one of them is a right angle, and it's just a bad choice. I have fought it along with others, and that's a specific example of just and the individual, he's knowledgeable. He used to work for the city, and he's knowledgeable about planning, and I'll fight it to the bitter end if it comes up again. So that's a specific example in itself, in my opinion. A bad example.
Okay. Scott, did they answer the question okay for you?
Yeah, very much. Thank you.
All right. Laurel Black has her hand up. Laurel, your question. And John, we're going to ask you to go first on this one. Laurel?
I appreciate both of you being with us today. I want to thank you both for having the sense of civic duty to want to serve your city. I think that's great. And I thank you for that. Now, referring to the opening statements, John, the challenger, says that the current council has had 4 years to fix things and hasn't gotten much done, in his opinion. So that prompts me to ask, what do each of you intend to get done in the next 4 years?
Again, John, could you go first?
As I stated up front, my primary reason for running is I want to address the vagrancy and drug culture that exists on our streets. And I will go into that a little bit more in my closing statement. But I have visited Auburn, Washington, and talked to their outreach program director there, and they have established, in fact, the director established the original program in Redmond, Washington. It's been adopted in Bellevue and in Auburn. He runs the one in Auburn, and he tells me it's being adopted in Issaquah. And basically, what it is, it's a shelter, a fixed building shelter for a day and a night shelter, and then you add services to that. The thing that makes it function is they then passed a complex no camping ordinance for the city of Auburn, and people who want to camp on public property or parks are tagged with 48 hours to move. If they don't move, they're approached again, and moving someplace else on public property is not, they can't just move across the street or whatever. They have to move out of public property. They have the alt centers, and in the centers they have resource centers available to help those people who want to retrieve their lives, so to speak. And the no camping ordinance is basically you enter our program where you leave town, but camping on public property is not an option. And then on my reactive programs, I could go on and on. As I said, I could talk for hours on research that I've done and solutions that I have to clean up our city.
Okay, Kate, over to you.
Thank you. So I think we certainly have a lot to do in the next 4 years. We have made some significant progress, specifically with housing. We've made some significant code changes that allow increased density in town, duplexes, AUDs. We passed some multifamily housing tax exemption. And so along those lines, the first thing that I'm looking forward to doing, we may make some progress on this before the end of the year. We will probably still be working on it as we head into the next year, and that is the code update. The municipal code is old, it's clunky, it's messy, it's got tenants everywhere. It's really hard for the public to use. And we're working to not only clean it up so that it's easier that it's more user friendly, but also to bring our current code up to the standard that it should be. We've had a fair amount of public outreach, and I don't know if any of you participated, but I hope you did. We will probably have some additional opportunities. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. I think that finishing the code update will help trickle down. It's not economic, so I think it will help trickle down and make some impacts in other areas. I think we need to continue to make wise financial decisions to help build our budget back up following COVID. We need to continue to support our local service partners that are building and developing permanent supportive housing. We need to, and I hope to continue to make headway on the capital facilities plan. We have a lot of important projects in that, some of which were stalled, like the railings at City Pier because of COVID, that I think we will be able to catch up on. I hope we will be able to catch up on and continue chipping away at the projects in the capital facilities plan. And within the code update, I think continuing to look at, or outside the code update, are there other things within our control that we could do to incentivize multifamily housing development? Obviously, building right now isn't anyone's first choice. At least it doesn't seem to be. It's pretty expensive. So I appreciate, obviously, the option Sherry's pursuing is a much more cost-effective way to get housing built. But I think those are some of the things that immediately come to mind. And I'm sure will be additional things that we will continue to work on. I think we've started some really great projects that if we continue to implement them, we will see some pretty significant improvements at the end of the next 4 years.
All righty. Thank you very much. Tyler Johnson, you have a question.
Yeah, first, thanks guys for coming to the meeting and taking some time to talk to us. it seems to me that a lot of when we get into these political forums, we get focused on one issue, and that's homelessness and drug use. And I think I haven't met one candidate that doesn't think that that's a problem and doesn't want to solve it. So what's something else that you guys want to do to help foster the growth of the city of Port Angeles? And Kate, as a city council person, how do you see your role in assisting the city employees that work there already, like Nathan West, in getting these things done?
It's just, yeah, kind of obviously a question to both of the candidates. If John was elected, how he would do this. And Kate, could you go first on that one?
Sure. I gotta stop saying my apologies. Someone mentioned it, a family member mentioned the other day, you say a lot. So I'm working on that. I think it's a nervous thing, probably. So I think the first thing that comes to mind, because we're in a limited amount of time, the first thing that comes to my mind that is a priority for me moving forward is to continue to address our infrastructure. And I think that can mean a lot of different things. One thing it means to me is continuing to work on implementing our complete streets ordinance. That ordinance is what resulted in the improvements to 10th Street. It needed to be redone, but it was having that ordinance allowed us to get some grant money to ensure that it had a sidewalk and a bike lane. And when it first was reopened, we heard lots of positives. The street in town, I'm going to come ride my bike here. So I'm looking forward to continuing to chip away at that, getting safe routes to school. With sidewalks, we walk to school and have one section of sidewalk to walk on. I'm not sure who decided it was a great idea to build a nice small town without sidewalks, but with the increase in traffic, certainly need them. And then additionally with infrastructure, ensuring that
Oops, we haven't seen them having some audio problems there.
John, you might want to tell her if she turns off her video. It happens to me a lot.
Kate, did you hear that? If you could turn off your video, we're having audio issues with you. Uh-oh. Kate, yeah. Okay. We lost her. John, we'll bring Kate back in. And can you go ahead with that question in the meantime?
Yeah, I'll try. I know the question drifted away from the vagrants and drug users and drug culture in our town. However, I think we need to clean that up in order to move forward in a positive way. Other than that, we need more housing, and I've looked at a lot of the commercial buildings, large commercial buildings that are vacant, and I think what can we do to make them useful, to look like a more progressive city. And one of the solutions I came up with is a possibility of retrofitting those into apartments for workforce housing and for people who come here to work for, say, the Olympic Hospital or the college or whatever. Another thing I would like to investigate is we have growing older population. I think perhaps we could investigate shag housing. They're growing like crazy down the I-5 corridor on the other side. Senior housing. Perhaps working with the city about putting up small duplexes. I think apartment buildings would be preferable. However, they're not realistic at this time. I think those, if possible, should be built downtown, close to the police, the fire department, services, whatnot. I believe that the Indian Hotel, the Elwha Hotel, if completed, if it's done in a class style, which I would anticipate, I believe that will be a draw for our downtown area. If I recall right, it takes 5 years to bring property into the tribal property, and at that time they can turn it into gambling. They can add gambling, and I believe that would be an addition to our downtown area. I'm not opposed to gambling, but I think it would draw people in, and they would venture out into our downtown area and spend their money there too. I don't know how long you want me to talk on this.
We don't have Kate back yet. Let's see.
Well, would you like me to keep talking?
Might as well, John. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go back to my reactive plans. Like I started to say, the building behind Matthews Glass is an eyesore. It's terrible to have that be what it introduces tourists to our town. It should be condemned. I don't know what the city can do to address that, but it needs to be taken care of. We have syringes and needles thrown around all over town. It's a bad situation. We need a place.
I'm gonna cut in just real quick.
Office,
Kate just emailed me,
Uh-huh.
and she said she's going to join shortly on her phone. So sorry
Great,
to interrupt
okay.
you, John. I just wanted to let her.
Okay.
She's trying to get back in.
Right.
We need some way to address these syringes and needles that are distributed all over our town. And perhaps one way would be to have like a refund, a buyback program where the drug users, they're always looking for money, which creates most of our petty crime in this town. And if we get kind of a refund for bringing syringes and needles back, they're paid cash, and they have to bring a minimum of, say, 5 or 10. You can't bring in 1 or 2 and get any kind of a noticeable refund, but perhaps they could help clean up some of the mess that they're creating themselves.
Okay, John. It looks like we have Kate back, I think.
Okay.
Kate, are
Yeah,
you
She's back. It looks
Yes,
like.
yes, I am. My apologies.
okay? Let's
My
go.
internet went out, so.
Oh, no problem at all. We're delighted to have you back. And why don't we start from the beginning on that?
Okay, this is the, what else? would we do?
Tyler, could you recap your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, what other problems do you see facing the city that you want to tackle in the next 4 years? And how do you see your role as a city council person in getting those things done?
Okay,
Perfect.
so thank you. I mentioned some infrastructure issues, sidewalks, and that sort of thing. And then I also want to, within the infrastructure, go back to where I think I was, which is at utilities. We are a full service city, and I want to be sure that we are continuing to build and maintain our facilities for the future. And one of the things that I laughed about as soon as I got kicked off my internet is potentially the idea of the city having a broadband utility, so that I would have more reliable internet. So I think that's something we could consider, certainly. But the utilities are a really important piece of what we do as a city. And I think in order to support staff to implement the things that we want to do, we just need to be making sure that we are creating sound financial decisions and making policies that don't require so much reprioritization, that other things that we've asked to get done don't get done, that we're overworking staff. And we really need to continue to focus. It's in our strategic plan right now. I think it should stay there, to focus on building capacity at City Hall so that we can accomplish some of the things that we really want to get to. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much for your patience, everyone.
Thank you. I'm delighted to have you back, and we'll go with John. Do we have any other questions? out there. I don't see anybody waving their hands here. Okay, let's maybe build on sort of what we just heard from the two candidates. Do you feel our downtown is healthy and successful? And if so, why? And if not, what actions would change that? And John, if you could go first on that. Downtown's healthy and successful?
I see. I think down on Front Street and First Street, those areas seem to be very vibrant, in my opinion, and they appear to do well. But they are also close to the to our vagrant and drug culture. It wouldn't take much for those to spill over. But no, it's great to build on. Like I started to say a while ago, I think that the new Elwha Hotel could add tremendously to it and draw more people to the downtown area, and it would become more and more attractive to tourists, and which is basically what our economy is leaning toward at this point, in my opinion.
Okay, Kate? Downtown healthy and successful? If so, why? And if not, what should be done?
I think downtown is relatively healthy and successful. I think we have some really dedicated downtown business owners and community members who enjoy the opportunity to support those local businesses. We've seen an increase despite COVID or in spite of COVID in the last couple of years in restaurant options that have, I guess, they were there before, but they so far have managed to survive, thankfully. I think a couple of things that are worth mentioning. City Pier certainly needs some addressing, and as I mentioned earlier, it is in the capital facilities plan, some components of that. We also, as a current council, are supporting the Blackball Ferry line with some of our American Rescue Plan Act funds. I think this is also really important because we are seeing a bump in tourism right now that helps our downtown thrive. I think there is some concern that is in part because of COVID, that people can't travel to other places. So we really want to be sure, selfishly, of course, I want it to be there. I think the ship itself is iconic to our community, but that route is really critical for our community. And so we as a current council are working hard to ensure that they continue to exist beyond COVID. And then lastly, I want to mention the chamber project, Elevate Port Angeles, which is funded through Port Angeles business, the parking and business improvement area funds that the city has not collected during COVID, but had collected prior to that, and will continue to collect at some point, I assume. Council decided that that was a really good use of that money, and so we designated it for the chamber to undergo this downtown planning process. And I think we will only see benefits from projects like that. And their outreach is broad and quite successful. And I think that will only benefit the downtown area.
Okay, Norm, we have a question from
Mr.
you.
Brewer, can I comment on that? Can I comment on that, Mr. Brewer?
Certainly, go ahead.
Hello. Through this past year, there have been many funds dribbled down from our government, the CARES Act, the ARPA funds, the ERAP, the TRAP, and ARPA, American Relief Plan. They stipulate how these monies can be spent. And although Mayor Dexter takes credit for giving $500,000 to the coho, in that plan, it stipulates that monies must be distributed to existing traveling businesses. So it sounds generous on one hand, but on the other hand, they're required to do that. That wasn't just the generosity that came up through the city council.
All right, Kate, do you want to respond to that, or?
Yes, please. I think there's some misunderstanding. There was a federal line item in the Defense Act that would have, which was not, there was no appropriation made for it,
that would have allowed the coho to get federal money. That didn't happen. The American Rescue Plan Act is $5.6 million that the city of Port Angeles received to use for COVID-related expenses, needs, etc. So there's no specific designation for the coho for transportation. It's really what within the confines of the COVID related, it's really up to the council how we spend that money. And I brought the issue to the council of the coho after talking to Commissioner Johnson about his concerns. And then he and I met with Ryan Mullane and reviewed how dire their situation was. And so I brought to council that that was something else I wanted council to consider. So sure, it's not our money. We didn't pull money out of our budget for it, but we are making, I think, very wise choices about how we spend those ARPA funds. And it is within our purview how we want to spend it. So I just want to make that clarification.
All right. Norm, your question.
Yeah, I recently heard, and I think it was on KOMP radio, but I may be mistaken, that there is some discussion of changing the downtown streets, essentially front and first, from the one-way configuration that they are right now to two-way configurations, which would somehow improve businesses and traffic flow, perhaps. I really fail to see how that would help, and maybe I'm mistaken in what I've heard. But if that was accurate, what I heard that's being discussed, I'd like to know what each of the candidates would say about that possibility.
Kate, you're up first on this one. One-way streets or two-way
Sure.
streets.
Thank you. So yes, the proper terminology, as we have learned, because we hear it over and over, is decoupling first and front. And that would start at the McDonald's where they currently split. So that is something that our council has talked about because it is in our city's comprehensive plan, which is a plan that is developed with the help of the city by the community and is updated every, I think it's 6 years. So don't quote me on that. I'm not positive that it's 6, but I think it's about every 6 years, and we could do amendments in the meantime. But we can't make major changes as a council to the comprehensive plan without significant community input. So that is currently in the comprehensive plan. It is not something that we have even begun to, we've talked about it, but without any figuring about how we would go about doing that, what it would look like, how we would pay for it, and how I think, particularly in the downtown core, but once you get a little bit away from the McDonald's, it certainly raises questions about who gets which direction and how does that, or if we do both, do we, what happens with the trucks? Which side do they go on? That sort of thing. So I think it certainly is a complex issue and one that we've talked about because it's in the comp plan, but haven't, and I don't think plan to do anything particular about that at this point, unless hundreds of $1 millions fell in our lap for infrastructure.
John, how do you feel about that subject?
Well, if I understand the question correctly, you're asking, should the one-way streets be converted to streets going both ways? And if that's the question, I would be definitely against it. I think it would inhibit the flow of traffic to change it from what it is.
Okay. Hey, we're approaching 8 a.m. and so let's go to closing statements if we could. 2 minutes each, please. And John, let's start with you first.
The incumbents were elected 4 years ago. They don't seem to care that our city is being destroyed environmentally. They don't seem to care that our 9/11 Memorial and Bell Memorial are desecrated. They don't seem to care that our city suffers from a reputation as being trashy and crime-ridden downtown. They don't seem to care that our downtown businesses suffer because of street vagrants. They don't seem to care that there are clean and safe trails for our working people to exercise. They don't care that young families have safe and clean parks for their kids. I don't believe that they represent all of the people they were elected to serve. I think it's time for some new, fresh ideas to be injected into our city council. And again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to this forum. And again, my name is John Proctor, and I'm running for city council in Port Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Over to you, Kate.
All right, thank you. All right, I will just end by saying that I look forward to the opportunity to continue building strong relationships, providing solid leadership, and serving the people of our community. One of the most important things I have learned in my 4 years working in city government is that I cannot accomplish anything alone. Policymaking is a team sport, and getting things done requires working collaboratively with staff, council, partner organizations, and most importantly, the people of Port Angeles. Everything we do as elected officials requires others, even and perhaps most especially getting elected in the first place. So today I ask for you to join me in continuing the good work we are doing by re-electing me to the Port Angeles City Council. And thank you for your patience with my tech issues.
All right. Wow. Very concise wind-up statements. Thanks very much, Kate. Thanks very much, John. And really appreciate having you here. Thank you again. And
Thank you again.
Scott, over to you.
So John and Kate, thanks